This week's topic, we're going to go back into and explore the sun. There is a reason why you are called solar athlete for. The power of light. And what I would really like you to do is kind of dig into the history of it. Like what do we know when did we start to see some of these things? We have talked off camera a lot that when I was a child, I used to get treated by these different lights by my mom when every time I got ill. So it's quite a while ago that these things already were out there. They were just not spoken about. So what do we know on maybe even touch up on things as historical as celebrating summer solstice and winter solstice and things like that. Like my nation celebrates shortest day of the year. So
Yeah.
what's happening there? What do we know about the light and its use for health and fitness?
Yeah. So as far as like historical perspectives, right? Like everybody kind of learns some level of history growing up in school and stuff like that. And you actually quickly understand that there's a theme, right? Egyptians worship the sun, certain religions worship the sun, the Aztecs and Mayans worship the sun. There's sun worshiping, right? So immediately that kind of puts some people off as far as like kind of taking it to like a religion or something like that. But those civilizations are considered pagan, right? Kind of like what you described as far as your nation as well, where it's not Christianity to worship the sun, but irrelevant of whether what your religious beliefs are or not. The fact that some of the most complex societies that's existed. Some scientists argue that they're more advanced than even us. Like still to this day, nobody really knows how the pyramids were built and that sort of stuff, right? Like, or at least not with any real common sense of like the timelines that supposedly these pyramids were built on. So there's something to say there, especially with their astrology and calculations of like calendar and how time works, way ahead of their game, way ahead of their game. And the fact that they develop belief systems around the sun is not to be left uncovered, right? It should come to your attention of like, okay, well, there's probably something there. There's a reason why the sun is so potent, right? And if you have been watching our channel for any number of episodes, you probably realize that there are frequencies within the sun that are actively acting on our biology, not just for like biological work, but also in the ways that you think and the ways that you compose yourself, the ways that whether you're anxious or not anxious or relaxed. Sun and frequencies within the sun have actual physical properties that are interacting with certain structures within cells. And that belief, right, if we take that from ancient civilizations, has not been lost up until really recently, like the last 30 to 50 years. And the reason for that is because we also have in the early 20th century, 1900s, right, 1918, 19, and even before, where this idea that there's something about the sun that's very potent was not lost on medicine, right? On medical doctors and people who are actively trying to fix issues, right? Because let's face it, this modern age, doctors are not fixing diseases, they're managing diseases. That's literally what it's called, right? It is managing a disease state, managing a pain state. They're not fixing anything. The only thing they fix are broken bones and accidents, right? Which they're extremely good at. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that don't go to the doctor, for a broken arm or car accident or whatever. They're extremely good at that, but they suck at fixing diseases. They don't fix diseases. They manage diseases, right? Now, that's not historically true. In fact, we know that in 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic was treated by sunlight. That was one of the main recommendations. You go outside, you spend as much time outside with as much skin exposed as possible.
And I think they actually came across that accidentally because they were running over hospital spaces and they started to put people outside
yes,
tents and they started to get better quicker than anyone else.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went down. So it wasn't they knew that did that. It was, hey, we stumbled upon this. It clearly does that, right? So that's kind of like one of the first what you could call modern medicine interpretations of like, oh, the sun clearly is helpful in a disease state. So I started recommending that more. And then we move forward, a few more years, 1940s, 1950s, you started seeing studies directly on different frequencies of light for different diseases and things of that nature. And this is where therapies like uh, blood irradiation, we've talked briefly about this before, where, and this is a treatment you can get these days. It's not lost, but doctors are not going to recommend it. This is somewhere where you go to like a functional medicine doctor or an acupuncturist or something like that. You don't go to a medical doctor for this type of treatment, but it is literally they're pulling your blood, they're irradiating it with UV light and infrared light, and then putting it back inside of you, because that's actually what your blood is doing. Your blood doesn't have any mitochondria. So that it can carry light information to the rest of the cells, because if the blood had mitochondria, then it would act differently when it is exposed to light. We don't want it to do that. We always want it to act one way, right? Because of what I explained in our previous video of mitochondria have the TCA cycle, and that changes one way or another depending on light stimulation and stuff like that. You don't want your blood changing what it's doing back and forth. You always want it to be consistent, and it needs to be a substrate that has fine control. And we know that from medical science, right? It has to have a very specific pH. It has to have a very specific amount of electrolytes in it, et cetera, right? So if you had mitochondria within your red blood cells, it would be changing all the time. So you don't want that to happen. So red blood cells are one of the only cells in your body, if not the only one, I haven't verified that for sure, that does not have any mitochondria. It's the only cell in your body, or one of the only ones, that does not have any mitochondria, so that it can do exactly what I said. It can carry light information without changing its state as far as like the actions and energies that it does, right? So UVB irradiation is a way, it's like a blanket way to get sunlight into the body with when you are missing sunlight. And I know that we've spoken about this before, but I do believe that where you're from, that was a treatment that was used or is used even possibly even now. But before that, right? So that's very fine.
It's more of a
That's
lost
kind of like,
art now.
yeah, it's more of a lost art now, and you just can't go to your normal doctor or anything like that and get that type of treatment. But those treatments do exist even now, and that is obviously a little bit invasive. You're going to have your blood pulled out of you and pulled back in, but but there are other treatments also for skin diseases like psoriasis. In fact, up until 50 years ago, 30 years ago, doctors knew about this enough to even prescribe you a light therapy device, specifically at 311 nanometer light. That's UVB light, and that is a legit treatment even today. But doctors don't recommend that because they're like, oh, we have more advanced stuff like biologics and chemical medications and things of that nature. When there really wasn't a need for those, right? Other than, okay, if doctors stop telling you about it, then obviously the only thing you're going to do is go with the prescriptions. But the natural treatment for psoriasis is 311 nanometer light, especially if it's localized psoriasis, like only on your head or only on your elbows or whatever, right? It treats that local stuff very, very adequately because the light is very targeted. But there are companies that actually sell bigger lights for full body psoriasis treatment. So again, that actually took some actual scientific intervention as far as like studies and things of that nature to figure out exactly what nanometers to use. And I do believe that that was done in the 60s and 70s as far as the actual testing. They were doing this with most of the patients were females because those are the people that spent most of their time indoors back then, right? So this doctor had a bunch of patients that were all female, and they were all getting psoriasis treatment with different phototherapies, right? And then they arrived that, hey, UV light is the most potent one at reversing this. And then they narrowed it down until they found it was deep UVB down in the low 300 nanometer range. And now we still have that technology today. You can go online and order psoriasis light
What
therapy.
time of the day is this light most common?
So it's going to be common in the middle part of the day if your UV index, right? If you look on your phone and your UV index is a 6 or above, you're going to have UVB light. Yes.
Mm.
Yep. And so that is coincidentally where when most people are inside, right? And psoriasis is actually kind of a common thing these days. I've found that not everybody gets diagnosed with psoriasis, but it is a very common skin problem that people have, especially in the modern world for some reason. It has to do with the lack of this particular UVB light. Now, this is where sunlight's obviously going to have it in it, right? But this is where specific light therapy protocols, and depending on your lifestyle, maybe you need stimulation of all of them, right? As close to full spectrum light as possible. And more companies that make red light therapy devices are starting to understand this, that it's not just about red light. You need some other types of light because they do things, right? And so there are some light boxes and stuff out there that or companies that make light boxes that have started to understand this, that are starting to include specific frequencies of UVA, specific frequencies of UVB, not full spectrum, right? So this is not a tanning bed bulb or anything like that. They're narrow band and they're targeting specific opsin receptors. And this is very important to understand. If it's narrow enough, you don't need broad spectrum because you're targeting the opsins that are controlling the actions at different tissues, right? So, for example, let's talk about psoriasis for a second. Psoriasis is a disease where the middle layer of the skin is growing faster than the top layer. So it starts to become scaly and like bubbly, right? So the top layer of skin isn't getting the correct growth timing mechanisms. Remember our previous video, the timing mechanism of when it gets dialed to more growth and less energy expenditure, that dial is not being turned correctly when it should be at different layers of the skin. We know that that's the action of, for example, infrared light penetrates very deeply. Near infrared light, a little less deeply. UVB light is the one that penetrates the least amount. So it only is like 1 or 2 millimeters into the skin, which is coincidentally the part of the skin in psoriasis that's not growing. But the middle layer, it gets penetrated by UVA and blue light and green light and yellow light. So those are visible spectrums, right? Those get penetrated that far. And we know this, right? That there's an interesting study that I just found like a month ago where it's kind of an alternative to x-rays where they literally make your skin see-through by shining a specific frequency of light only on the body, and they can start to see through your skin. It's in its infancy right now as far as the technology goes, but they can literally see through your skin if they shine the right frequency of light on you because it penetrates only that distance and then reflects back. So this concept is what's happening in psoriasis, is that you're missing UVB, which only stimulates the very top layer to grow and not the under layer, but you're getting too much of essentially fake light because that's dominant in blue and green and yellow, and it comes through the first layer and activates the middle layer, and that's what's growing at an exponential rate. Just like a plant, right? A plant that gets, parts of the plant or leaves of a plant that get way more sunlight, they grow bigger, they grow faster. Parts of a plant that get less sunlight, they're going to grow a little bit less. You can see that anecdotally with houseplants. Your skin and layers of your body act in the same way. That's why full spectrum sunlight kind of keeps those types of things at bay. But when you do come across an issue like this, first thing you needed to be thinking about is, what layer of my body is this in? And that immediately starts to tell you a little bit about which light therapies are going to be most beneficial for your particular problem. And you look at it in a layered system like that. And then once you determine the layer, that's when you can get down to very specific frequencies of light, just kind of ranging from nanometers of light. In fact, it might be useful for me to share. Let me just pull it up. Just
Before you go
frequency.
there, I hope I'm not gonna
Yes, go ahead.
get you off the idea, but we have a playlist about how to pick up a red light therapy and all the kind of stuff. We're probably gonna do some follow-up because we made it over a year ago and it might need some touching up. What I want to know is if you are coming across the idea of that is it that we need to have this specific light at specific time of the day, or do we need to go through all the spectrum of lights throughout the day for specific period of time to be healthy? Or does it need to be in a specific, hey, on this time comes this light, at this time comes that light? What if somebody works in office all the time, or works in a winter setting where there is 4 hours of daylight through the winter? Would they benefit from just having exposure to specific light for a specific time, or do they need to be exposed to that light at specific time of the day? If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I do understand what you're saying there. And so the way that it would function, like I'm trying to be as optimal as possible. It would function with both of those. There are specific frequencies that hit you at specific times. Now, when you're trying to just be healthy, but you're trying to hack your inability to be outside, right? Because not everybody can do that. Then I would say the priority should be just the light frequencies alone, static throughout the day, because you're not going to be able to vary that. Now, NASA understands this very deeply for their astronauts. They're actually trying to develop a light that does this through a normal sun spectrum. So in other words, the light has all the different frequencies in it, and it turns some on and turns some off as the wake cycle of the astronaut is going through, right? So the answer is people are looking into making it as close to the sun and how it should vary throughout the day. That technology doesn't exist for the public currently, right? So the answer to what can you do right now is at least get some lights that have all the different frequencies for your body to do what it needs to do, and you would have all of them on basically static throughout the day, or supplementing them periodically throughout the day, depending on whether the light has timers or not. And then once the sun goes down, the only frequencies that you would want to interact with you would be infrared and red in general. Does that make sense?
I think a good reminder would be, again, that not necessarily every single day needs to be like this, but if you can dedicate one day a week or every other week where you just go and spend as much time outside, that would be great, right?
Oh, absolutely. That would be kind of like, this is kind of like supplementing food, right? You don't drink your protein powder 3 or 4 times every day, right? Like you've got to get some whole food in there, because that's how the body works, right? Like that's just how you're not going to be able to survive on synthetic foods alone.
Yeah, I know some rugby teams, they use like a heavy dose of vitamin D once a month.
Yeah, and that can be helpful from just purely from a vitamin D perspective. And if you guys, if the audience is a little bit confused on why vitamin D might not be the full thing that you want for health, our vitamin D video really goes deep into, hey, supplementing vitamin D helps, but it's not the full story. And so for those teams, right, something that would be even more helpful would be, hey, once or twice a month, we dedicate to making sure that our guys get outside and get a tanning session for an hour or 2 in the middle of the day, on top of we supplement with a heavy dose of vitamin D. So you can start playing with those types of scenarios for yourself. Just like you said, hey, maybe once a week, I set out some time to go outside and get a lot of sunlight. Now, most people that work indoors, are also going to live somewhere where the sun's not available year round. And I do this myself, right? Like I have a UV light on right now and an infrared light on right now. It's winter, or the winter is coming for me, right? My days are much, much shorter, and they're going to get pretty short here coming up. So a hack that I develop is, develop's not really like, I didn't develop it. It's just common sense. Okay, if I'm not getting these frequencies of light, or I'm spending way more time indoors, I want to supplement them just like I would a supplement for my food, or a supplement for my vitamins and minerals, right? If I'm doing things that are clearly going to put me in a slight deficit of certain things, I supplement them. So in this case, when the sun is weak, things that I know that I need infrared for sure, right? So that's one of the first things that a good quality infrared light device. And then I need
not just red light from Amazon, but actual red light.
Correct. Yeah. A high quality red light device that's giving you the correct frequencies of light, and ideally 4 frequencies or more. You could get away with 2, but you want at least 2. And then you want some level of UVA and some level of UVB. Much less, right? You don't need a full tanning bed, because that's not how the sun works. The sun, only has about 5 or 10% of the light that comes from the sun is UV, right? The rest of it is fully in the red and infrared spectrum and visible light spectrum. So it's one of those things where the thing that most people need the most of is infrared light. But that's probably the primary, and that's why most of these red light companies and things, that's why it's become very popular, is because it's very easy to see rewards when you start supplementing light that you're missing. You start to feel better. You start to feel a little bit more energetic, especially when you are in the wintertime and you're missing that light. It's, everybody that lives somewhere where it becomes winter knows what it feels like to be at the tail end of winter and just not be feeling very good. And you start getting, cabin fever and whatever, all these different symptoms of like restlessness and like tiredness at the same time. And then finally you get that first week or two of good, proper sunlight in March or late March, and you feel like a completely different person. That's what people experience when they are chronically light deficient and you just supplement synthetically some light. They're like, wow, this is wonderful. So that's why red light therapy has become so popular, is because it's clearly a benefit.
And that's why coffee is so popular.
It is, because you're 100% right. It's because so many people are energy deficient in terms of at the cellular level. And the only thing that really kind of keeps them rolling is having a chronic adrenal dump every morning. Right. So, it is what it is, but that's the truth of the matter. And then we have UV light, right? UV light is going to expand even more on that by creating other products like sex hormones, vitamin D, et cetera, and things of that nature to kind of keep the system running well. So yeah, realistically speaking, in the modern world, you're going to find more and more, and there are already companies that are doing this, that are moving towards developing lights for humans that live indoors, right? It's almost inevitable.
And we also see it in physical like therapy treatments. One of my physiotherapists, he started to do it like 10 years ago, where he would do a shockwave treatment for calcified joints and then would follow up with infrared laser immediately. And 3 treatments within 10 days, you feel like there's never been an issue with a joint. And a lot of people still suffer it. And every single time I go in a gym, I'm like, first of all, you probably don't train correctly if you always have joint issues. And second of all, you need to find a professional who can fix it, because we can fix a hell of a lot now.
Yeah, especially people that really know the intricacies of again, how physics works, right? Like, for example, right, you mentioned calcification and the shockwave treatment for that at the joint level, and then filling it with infrared light after targeted laser light. That's a clear, if you just think through the physics there, hey, I'm going to bring out any calcium that's in excess with this shockwave treatment, and then I'm going to irradiate it with laser light, which is going to make more mitochondrial water, and it's going to facilitate more energy locally there through cellular processes to upregulate the repair process that needs to happen. And it's going to be done instantly with light therapy immediately after exposing the joint to the sonic wave treatment. It's very intuitive, right? Like, you don't really need to be validated to just try that out, and then it's like, oh, it works, right? So you have to be a little bit nuanced with these types of treatments. Like, for example, the treatment for psoriasis that they discovered, right? They knew it was a skin problem. They'd already observed that skin problems get better in the sun. They didn't know what type of light it did, so they just tried them all, right? And then next thing you know, they arrive at the right frequency, and they're like, okay, that's it, right? And sure enough, that treatment works so well that even 50 years later, after nobody talks about it, is still available and still a treatment that you can buy for yourself for psoriasis and things of that nature. So, um, anyway, that's kind of the history of light therapy. Brief, little tidbits of light therapy is something that's been known about for a long time to treat diseases, to treat actual improvement outcomes and changing them. And essentially, as long as you continue to get the right light frequencies, they don't come back. Whereas,
so there's a correlation why you're less likely to get ill in the summer.
there is, right? There 100%, right? And that's actually why, some of the nomenclature with like the coronavirus even happened. The reason why that whole family of viruses is called that is because when the corona of the sun is strong, it kills the virus. That's how they named it. They named it because in the summer you shouldn't be able to get it. if you're outside. And so when the sun is absent, that's when you get coronaviruses.
I have a million like questions like is there a light that we can use to increase my bench press?
um,
Dude, I
well, I
want to
mean,
deadlift 900 pounds in 2 weeks. Is there
yeah.
something you can do after each deadlifting session to just increase that through light? Like, well,
But I mean, so let's put it this way, right? That there are, okay, so now there are, because of this whole light story and how people are kind of catching on, and they're like, well, it's just a light. There's not, let's just change the color of our light bulbs or change to a different manufacturer of lights and see what happens to light performance in gyms. There are now gyms that are introducing infrared light into the gym environment. Now, what that does is it allows you to work a little bit harder. It allows you to put a little bit more. You're literally going to have more ATP production and better functioning mitochondria in the time that you're doing that. Now, anybody that's trained outside actually really kind of understands that you can work outside and train outside and you feel absolutely probably the best types of workouts that you'll ever have outside, just because your body is functioning at a much more optimal level.
so this is
And
where the farmer's strengths come from, right?
yeah, I mean, because you're essentially tuning the whole system to react appropriately to the stimulus at every biological level, because the whole biological system is being interacted with by all the different frequencies of light as you're doing the training. So this is a concept from training that I've picked up from Broderick and Andrew Triana and all these people, which is the environment you introduce the stimulus to matters more than the stimulus,
Mm.
right? So the mindset, the outside environment, sunlight, indoors, cold, hot, etc., and the environment internally, in terms of, what was the nutrition like 3 or 4 hours before, 90 minutes before, etc. All of those variables, when they line up, the result from the stimulus is different than when you just apply the stimulus in a static environment. That so you're 100% right.
And we
Farmers.
see it over and over. I keep mentioning the book behind the behind our recordings that I read about, like it's called Bounce by Matthew Said, where he talks about environment is so powerful. Like if you can live on the same street, and if you have slightly different like mental approach at home, but go to the same exact coach and whatever, you're gonna have completely different outcome at the end. So two kids, same age, same genetical setup and whatnot, but the slight difference is just that environment at home from their family or mom and dad maybe not supporting them instead of telling them, hey, you're gonna be great, and the outcome down the line will be completely different.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly what I wanted to highlight is, um, when it comes to sports and performance and even and not even sports, but just like mental performance, right? Your ability to compose yourself at work and those types of things, those are all heavily influenced by the environment that you're in, uh, mentally, physically, and internally, in terms of how your biology is running. Just, you know, and some people may have experienced this already, right? If your stomach is upset and you're not digesting things well, you don't necessarily have a problem yet, but your brain clearly is not performing well, right? Like I'm just saying, you don't even get food poisoning. You just eat something that doesn't agree with you, right? Like that happens sometimes. You don't feel well, and not only do you not feel well physically, you don't feel well mentally because
Mm.
it's so intertwined, right? And it goes backwards the other way. When you are not mentally in the zone or mentally setting yourself appropriately to get the right outcome, you're not going to get the right outcome even if you did the prescribed task like you should have, right?
Mm.
And then you take this, how does this affect, or how is this affected by light? Well, if you're hypoxic slightly because you're indoors and you're under only fluorescent light bulbs, that means that you are starving certain neurons of oxygen. You're starving other neurons of the ability to create ATP as fast as they should. They're underperforming. So that literally starts to manifest in your work and in your thinking capabilities, right?
So
So
it's correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing from you is you can increase your energy, which everyone wants. That's the main goal from what I hear from everyone who wants to go to gyms. They don't want to look jacked. They just want to feel more energized and they want to do more stuff. But they can literally achieve that if they dedicated, let's say 10, 25 minutes a day by just being outside.
Yeah, and
Instead of
doing it
going on a treadmill
strategically.
and sweating in the garage.
Mhm. Yeah, doing it strategically, right? And we've pointed it out. Hey, to set the mind right and kind of get biology rolling in the right way, 15, 20 minutes of outside time in the morning. Most people will find that that's very relaxing and kind of sets them up for the day, irrelevant of how they wake up. And then in the evening, doing the same thing so that you can kind of reset or wash away, push pause on what's happened for the day as far as stress accumulation. But then there is the mental clarity through the day, right? That's very important. Taking, everybody's about, oh, you need to take a little break from your work to stretch and move around and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but you should do it outside, or you should do it in a way somewhere where you change the light environment to upregulate cellular function to dissipate some of the stress and the fatigue that you're accumulating. Because infrared light, aka sunlight, will give the biology all of the things that it needs to reduce inflammation, not just from the infrared spectrum, but all the other spectrums as well.
I think I threw you off completely from what you wanted to share, but
No,
really
this
good point.
actually works really, really well. So I'm going to share my video, my screen right now. And so what I wanted to bring up was this light frequency chart right here. Now, this is the visible spectrum. You see that it's the bottom is 400 nanometers and the top is 700 nanometers. Infrared light therapy, the zones that you want to focus on, or the frequencies, I should say, are the ones that you don't get very often are going to be in the ultraviolet range. So that's below 400. That's going to be like 380 and all the way down to like 280 and stuff like that. So UVB is 300 to mid 300s. UVA is in the upper 300s. And then the other frequencies of light that you're going to be seeing, there's obviously red, which is in the 600, and then the infrared, which is in the 800s, and then the deep red, which is in the 900s, right? So this is just quickly kind of highlighting some of the different frequencies that you miss from visible light spectrum, because light bulbs, LED light bulbs, focus on giving you the most visible spectrum light only. And they're heavy in this frequency over here, right? So you're missing a lot of this already. And you're definitely missing anything below 400 and anything above 700. You're just not going to get it. But your melanopsin receptors are tuned to those non-visible spectrums of light. And what I mean by that is the following, right? I mentioned, right, a couple companies that are kind of ahead of what's going on. One of these, well, let's trash that, is this company right here. This is called Chroma. Now, they sell some very interesting looking devices here. The reason why is because they're doing targeted therapy, right? So I'm going to click on one of these and I'm going to show you how targeted this really is. If you go down here to the technical specs, right, they are they start their therapy at the opsin 5 receptor, which is melanopsin, I do believe, at 385 nanometers of light, so deep violet. They then target opsin number 3 and opsin number 5 at the 450 nanometer light range, opsin number 4 at the 485 nanometer range, and then from this point forward, they target all the different biological systems that have infrared receptors. So they target the 630 and 670. Those are going to be visible red. 760, still visible red. And then finally 850, 935, 1050. These are in the deeper near infrared. So they're targeting all of the different receptors. And this is more for targeted therapy, unless you buy the setup that they have here, which is the Promethean portal, which these are targeted to be set up at the spinal cord and the meridian lines of the body.
Right.
Okay.
That's completely another topic that we need to cover it one day.
Yeah. So anyway, so this company is well ahead in actually going down and finding, okay, so we're targeting opsin receptors, which are going to be influencing all the biological systems. This is what they're after. Then we have EMR Tech. These have been pretty damn good for all infrared stuff, right? Just infrared light. They have all the right frequencies of infrared. They have 4 of them in their setup. They have 630, 670, and 850. So 3 of them in this one. And then in
This is your traveling light, isn't it?
yes, that's my traveling light. Yep. And then the next one above that, which is the one that I have behind me right here, that one has 4 frequencies of light: 630, 660, 670, 810, 830, and 850. Sorry, excuse me. They have 5 frequencies of red light. Those are the dedicated red lights, but they have recently also figured out that, hey, we need some UV light stimulation. And so they've come out with their latest iteration, which includes UV light simulation. So they have all the ones that I listed before: 606, 630, 660, 810, 830 for the infrared range. Then they've added.
So for somebody who's looking at this, would it be wise to, let's say, maybe go to their local health center or gym, because it's quite a lot of money for somebody? Would they need it more often than a couple times a week? That's what I'm asking.
It's hard to answer because it depends on how light deficient they are.
Right. For let's say, would it be beneficial for somebody just have it once a week, and instead of buying full appliance, they would just go to their health center? Hey, by the way, if you would buy this, I would pay you extra just once a week just to have treatment.
Yes, I would say any would be better than 0. Just like a nutritional protocol. Hey, at first you might not be able to afford or get high quality food all the time, but anything that you layer in is always going to be beneficial. Yes, I would 100% agree with that. If a health center somehow purchased some of these, and you were able to sign up for a program where you get, I don't know, 3 sessions a week or whatever, that would be very beneficial. Yeah, for sure. And then, if money's not a problem, right? This particular one right here, it's not that big. It's 2 panels. This is something that you could set up at an office setting, and it's an all-in-one thing, right? Now you don't have to do what I do, which is UV light on one device and infrared light on the other. It becomes a 1-unit type of thing. And that goes a long way, especially because the UV spectrums that they have in here, this is 311 nanometer light. That's the opsin receptor for the psoriasis problem. They also have 340 and 400, and that is also going to trip anabolism at cellular level, so like regeneration and things of that nature, that UVA. So they have UVA and UVB all included in one panel. Again, these 2 companies that I'm highlighting them for a reason. They are aware of the stuff that I'm talking about, and they are going out of their way to make a product that's going to influence future thinking of how you interact with light. Other companies just are behind the ball. When it comes to an infrared therapy device, at a minimum, you want 2 frequencies, some in the 600, some in the 800. If they don't list the frequencies, don't buy the device. More than likely, it's just a red LED.
Yeah. And we see that before already.
Yes.
I think what we're gonna do, because there's so much to unpack, and maybe you can agree with this, let me know. Maybe go and make a video about every single frequency, and then when it could be used, how it can be used, and so on and so forth. And maybe even go and break down those equipments you just highlighted in future videos.
Yeah, I think that would be, if people, if people reach out to us and that's something that they're interested in, that we can totally do that. The options and what they do individually. I mean, I'm sure people will find that interesting, but it'd probably be even more interesting for medical professionals and things of that nature. But yeah, that's totally something that we can do.
And I think it's extremely relevant, because modern lifestyle is not going to go anywhere. So the best we can do is make sure we mix and match it, so we are at our healthiest, at our best, not just physically but mentally as well. And this is the way, because not everyone can afford to go out for 10 walks a day. It's just not going to happen.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome, David. Appreciate you as always. Thanks for your time, and I'll catch you in next video.
Thank you. Have a great day.